ain't no destination, man, the journey is everything. Yeah.
What's up, everybody? Patrick here, the Grow Dude Show, episode number 2. In today's episode, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the medical cannabis program, or medical cannabis in Canada, I guess is probably a better way to put it, and clarify some of the terms that are being used, have been used, and have changed over the last little while. And again, this is only because of my experience kind of going through it over the last 12 months. So I'm going to jump right into the web, and we're going to surf around and we're going to look around at ACMPR. And that's a term you hear being used a lot. So ACMPR stands for Access to Cannabis for Medical Purposes Regulation. Now, that ACMPR regulation no longer exists. If you look here on canada.ca under Health Canada, it says here, the Cannabis Act came into force October 17th, 2018. Since that date, the new regulation replaces the Access to Cannabis for Medical Purposes Regulation. Really, all it means is there's no difference. The program is kind of slid over sideways under the Cannabis Act. So there is really no such thing as ACMPR, but it is still a term being used within the Health Canada documentation. So, what does ACMPR switched under the Cannabis Act really mean? Not too much of a difference. The only thing is that everything is now regulated under the Cannabis Act. So, to get started, anybody can grow 4 plants legally within Ontario. I'm speaking from that experience. In Canada, most places, whatever the legal age is. If it's your property, you can rent. I think you have to notify the renter or the owner of the property. You can put your 4 plants in and grow. Anybody who wants to grow more than those 4 has to do so under the medical program for medical purposes. So if you want to grow any more, you need to go down this route. The only way down this route is to actually find a healthcare practitioner or a doctor who will sign you a script and will sign your application for a certain amount of cannabis. So basically the regulation is for every gram of cannabis you're prescribed, you can grow, I think it's 5 indoor plants, 2 outdoor plants. Under the Cannabis Act, the patient is authorized by their healthcare provider to be able to buy directly from a federally licensed seller, an LP, register with Health Canada to produce a limited amount of cannabis for their own medical purposes, or designate someone to produce it for them. So very similar to the old program before, but that kind of identifies the whole point of the program. So under the new regulations, there's some improvements for patients. The ability to request the return of their medical documents from a federally licensed seller, the ability to request the transfer of medical documents to a different federally licensed seller. There's also people who have gotten multiple purpose for medical license under the Health Canada Act and have sent them to different places too. So it's a bit of a convoluted system, but it'll get cleaned up over time as well. There's an effective date on your registration. It's usually 12 months, and then it has to be renewed. There's a removal of a 30-day limitation period for buying cannabis from a federally licensed seller. A broad range of permitted products, that's true. And access to increasing number of licensed producers and sellers. For those registered with Health Canada to produce their own medicine for medical purposes, or who are designated to do so for someone else, there's an effective date on the document from Health Canada. It's 12 months. So at this point, the program is set up so that you go to a company. They will help you with an application process. They set up an appointment, usually a Skype call with a doctor or a healthcare practitioner, which can be a nurse. They review your health records. Basically, with the most minimal of any issue, you're going to get a 5-gram license without any problem. If you have any real medical or more serious medical issues, then that license can go up to 40 grams a day at the very high level. I've heard of 80-gram licenses a day. And so you could produce obviously like 400 or 500 plants from that amount. So those are monster licenses. So again, these are all in the system. Again, this is a design to help bring people into the system and also let more people grow without the worry of actually having their houses raided for it as well. So impact on the Cannabis Act on registered patients. Again, all the ACMPR stuff and the MMPR or RP, I can't remember the program before, has all slid under the Cannabis Act. So once your license expires, they ask you 8 weeks beforehand to reapply and to renew your documentation. You do have to go to a healthcare professional or practitioner to sign your renewal. So again, if your health issues change, those applications and the permitted grams will change as well. And I think the last I heard, this whole program for the medical portion was put under, I think, about a 5-year limit from the launch of the Cannabis Act. And then they're going to see what the program is at that point and what they're going to do. So the possession and storage limits, those are the same under the Cannabis Act. I'm not going to go over all of them, but it's roughly 150 grams. It changes based on your license and what you have approved. And then some of the other improvements that they've listed here. Again, all internal stuff that doesn't matter. Next, I would jump here. There's also licensed cultivators, processors, and sellers of cannabis under the Cannabis Act. On this page on canada.ca, it actually lists out all the companies here and what they're licensed to do. I think it's well worth it for you to review those producers to find out which ones are producing the kind of meds that you're looking for. Here, as I mentioned on IG yesterday, these are qualified companies that sell seeds, and these are ones that sell actual plants or clones to folks as well. And these are for medical purposes, as far as I know. I don't know if these are also for, no, sorry, my bad. It says for personal or designated production of cannabis for the medical purposes. Okay, so there you go. Quick review of what ACMPR was, what it is now, how everything kind of goes under the umbrella of the Cannabis Act, and that really you need to apply for a medical license if you want to grow more than your 4 plants, or if you want to have higher restriction or less restrictions and higher numbers in how many grams you're allowed to consume a day, order a day, hold a day on you, travel with. When you have the license under the medical for the Cannabis Act. I'm trying to figure out the name because I keep wanting to say ACMPR all the time. I'm trying to find a way to figure out what the right terminology is, even though it is actually still used quite a lot inside the Health Canada documentation. But you can also travel with your medical marijuana or cannabis on planes. So there's a lot of options. I also know it's been tested. You can fly with a plant. So you can go around with a clone or a vegging plant, but you can't go around with a blooming plant. That's a no-no. But someone was able to get onto an airplane with a clone and they weren't able to stop or say anything. So that's kind of like what's happening. So if you want to go outside of that, you have to pay for a license. Licenses range anywhere from $200 all the way up to $1,000 or $2,000. All of these different companies that are out there charge a different amount. It is pay for play. It's kind of silly because it doesn't make a difference whether I go in for an appointment with a doctor, whether I have a lower back problem or, in my case, a couple of broken discs in my spine. It's the same Skype call. It's the same questions. It's the same type of time taken, and it really doesn't change the process. But that same person at the front end is being charged $200, and then someone looking for a higher number of grams is being charged $750. So I think you can read between the lines and see there's some money being made here, and it's probably not money going back into the system to really help the industry. So buyer beware. Those prices are flexible. They're dealing with high profit margins. So know that when you're negotiating the price that you're going to pay for your license. And really all you're paying for is the prescription. Once you have that signed, you can basically fill out your documentation to apply to actually grow your own based on your prescription. Then you'll be able to get a certificate from Health Canada like I have, and that certificate will outline how many plants you can grow and your daily limits. And it also puts you into the system so that your name is there as well. That way, if anything ever does happen, you can lean on that. part of the documentation says clearly you should keep this documentation with you. So you can't kind of go around with a pound of weed and not have your document if a police comes around and asks you if you are or not. So keep that in mind. If you have the certificate, make a copy of it. I'd do a full color copy and keep it in your wallet or purse. If you have a grow room, make sure to take a copy of your documentation and stick it on the outside door or whatever seal is outside of the door beforehand, just to make sure you have it where you need it so that you're playing by the rules. In the next video, I think I will cover some of that basic safety of how to transport your cannabis. A lot of the regulation, even on the medical side, very specifically says you need to have it in very specific containers, either from the licensed producer, or it needs to be in specific containers or secured boxes, and you have to have your medical purpose certification as well under the Cannabis Act with you. So I'm going to go over that in a video because I think that requires a little bit more information and it's very specific to that, and I think it would be well worth covering. Anyways, hope everyone's having a great day and keep growing out there.